The real Albert Patterson was, in fact, murdered following his victory in the Democratic primary for Attorney General of Alabama. In his zeal for authenticity, director Phil Carlson even put John McIntyre in the actual suit Patterson was wearing when he was shot to death. The film was made on location in Phenix City only months after Patterson's murder, while the killers were still being sought. Writers Crane Wilbur and Daniel Mannering spun their own version of justice for the movie's finale, but the reality turned out to be far different. The men eventually indicted for Patterson's murder were Albert Fuller, a local deputy, solicitor Arch Farrell, and outgoing Attorney General Cy Garrett. Not gangsters, local law enforcement and politicos. Only Fuller, the cop, was found guilty. Despite his dramatic vow, the real John Patterson did not personally track down and capture the racketeers who killed his father. In reality, he made a highly publicized trip to Washington, D.C. to ask J. Edgar Hoover to have the FBI investigate the murder. Hoover refused to see him. This blind eye from the government is what aroused public outrage in Alabama, leading the governor to put Phenix City under martial law, with the state's National Guard taking over for the corrupted police department. A grand jury eventually handed down 734 indictments against Phenix City cops, elected officials, and business owners who had catered to organized crime. John Patterson was elected as Alabama's new Attorney General, but his relationship to the victim prohibited him from taking any part in the investigation of his father's murder. One of the hot buttons this film was not afraid to push as early as 1955 was the South's ingrained racism. Even though it's subtext to the main plot, you feel the discrimination and anger that will soon come to a head with the civil rights movement. Not only did Phil Carlson and his crew have the guts to make this film in the actual locations where the crimes occurred, despite persistent threats from law enforcement, criminals, and the Ku Klux Klan, he also stood up to the Production Code Authority, refusing its demand that the murder of Zeke Ward's daughter be cut from the film. Carlson not only left that scene in, he rubbed salt in the wound by showing how cavalierly the crime is treated by local cops. But don't think John Patterson, the hero of this story, was a friend to the African American community. Once he became the state's governor in 1958, Patterson revealed himself as a vehement segregationist, blocking all attempts to integrate the state's public schools. Despite this, Alabama citizens still felt he was not tough enough. Patterson lost re-election to George Wallace, a once moderate Democrat who campaigned on an even more strident white is right platform. The Phenix City story was a big hit for Allied artists, thanks to the media coverage of Patterson's murder. Georgia's Columbus Ledger newspaper won a Pulitzer Prize for its investigation of organized crime in Phenix City. For many, this is Phil Carlson's masterpiece, a blunt and brutal blending of noir theatricality and documentary realism, fueled by a fierce social conscience. He created a unique atmosphere by refusing to inject any Hollywood glamour into the proceedings. Despite the against-type casting of Edward Andrews as crime boss Rhett Tanner, and the presence of Hollywood players like Richard Kiley, Catherine Grant, and James Edwards, it's the locals that Carlson cast, like the actual brothel madam Ma Beachy, who make the biggest impression. This was not an easy film to make, but Carlson managed it so well that 18 years later he'd apply the same formula to another true-life crime story, turning the tale of small-town Tennessee Sheriff Buford Pusser into the 1973 film Walking Tall. Carlson had a percentage of the profits on that massive sleeper hit, and it allowed him to retire a multimillionaire. Well, let me know what you thought of the Phenix City story on the Noir Alley Facebook page and Twitter feed. Then come back next week when I'll be presenting the Noir Alley premiere of the Film Noir Foundation's most recent restoration, 1948's The Argyle Secrets, a brisk and somewhat wacky B film about the hunt for a ledger containing the names of American bigwigs who collaborated with the Nazis during World War II. Fans of 50s television will have a ball spotting the future TV stars in this low-budget homage to the Maltese Falcon. Until then, see you in the shadows.